I'm Kegan. We're up here in Canada with JM at his original farm. We're here to talk about new and profitable farmers. We're going to get a little bit of a tour of the farm and kind of talk to JM about how it started and what's kind of happening now.
The name of the farm here is Les Jardins de la Grelinette, which is Broad Fork in French. We started the project here in 2004 with my wife, Maude-Helene.
Well, I think we're going to take a tour and kind of walk us through maybe how it started, what it looked like when you got here, and kind of what's kind of happening now.
Sure, let's do it.
Perfect. This tank to the inner tank, how does that work?
Okay, the tank to the inner tank. The inner tank is inside because we need to be watering the young seedlings with water that's not too cold. So well water wouldn't do it. And this tank has the same level as the inside tank because that tank wasn't big enough. And so they're like, once they're connected, it's like one tank. And this one we fill with well water, with water from the pond.
Okay.
Because the well is not strong enough to really feed both. So water for us has been an issue just in the last 3 years.
Okay.
Before that, we just kind of had the water we needed to operate. And the farm here, the scale hasn't really, augmented with the years. We started here in 2004 on an acre and a half, and we're still farming that acre and a half. And so we've have more productivity, we have more yields. There was some breakthroughs over the years, a lot of them that I've shared in my book, The Market Gardener. But all in all, I think the water issue is kind of connected to the weather. So these are the greenhouses. We have 4 greenhouses. This is the main one. This one is where we grow tomatoes.
Okay.
And we also do the seedlings, the starts here. So this is our bigger one. This one we start really early in the season. And the other ones, they're more like hoop houses, or tunnels, but they have some heating capacity because we grow cucumber and peppers and eggplants in the summer, and then in the spring, winter, and fall we grow greens for 4-season farming here. It's an acre and a half. We feed about 250, 300 families. We do 2 farmers market, 1 CSA drop-off. We do 1 restaurant and some little grocery stores in the area. It employs 5 people for 8 months out of the year. And we have no tractor, and we've been farming with hand tools ever since we started the farm, and it's been proving to be quite successful.
How soon will you get tomatoes in the ground in this one?
Tomatoes for us, we want to have them end of May, start of June. So when the market starts, we want to be the first at market with tomatoes. And since we're already heating the greenhouse for the nursery, we combine both. And these tomatoes, we start them inside the house early February. Okay. And the house, we have a big sunroom, so we can really start them there. And it's not costing us too much to grow, because here in the winter it's below 0 Fahrenheit. It's pretty cold in Quebec.
And did you start with any of these, were any of these on the property when you got here, or kind of how has it started to what we're looking at now?
Well, the farm was a rabbit barn. So it's a 10-acre plot. There's about 7-acre forest in the back, and that's where we have the huts for our interns. I'll show you that. But when we started, there was the field and there was the rabbit barn. So it was 19 years of putting work every year, and that's really the key. Is when you're starting, you're thinking about all the things that need to be done, but we sometimes forget that we have the time. Over the years, it builds up.
You don't need it all at once?
No,
that's great.
You can't build it all at once because you don't know what you don't know.
That's true. Yep.
So you see the nursery is connected to the greenhouse. When we want to bring some of the greens out, it's easy. It's an easy access. When we started in 2004, I had never seen a farm that was running on permanent raised beds.
Really?
Yeah, I had seen in Cuba how they were doing things there without tractors on acres, but I had never really seen a farm. I had seen gardens that were doing it, but most people were running either with tractors, and it was kind of trying to use tractors at a small scale, and I saw that wasn't really efficient. But the permanent raised bed was the first thing that we put into the design of the farm. then making all the field blocks the same size. There's 10 of them surrounding the warehouse. And because the beds were permanent, we felt that we didn't need to have a tractor because we don't need to be making the beds all the time, shaping, disking, hilling, mounting soil. And then quickly enough we got a two-wheel tractor, a BCS tractor, to come into the play. Worked with all sorts of tools, but harrows, these black tarps that you'll see on the farm, that's how we clean the bed. I had never seen other people do that. I'm not saying that I'm the inventor of this, because for sure I'm not, but we really popularized this idea of using big tarps to clear whole field blocks. And so that's how we get rid of some of the crops that are growing. We tarp them for a few weeks, and then whoosh, there's a no-till strategy, and then the beds are clean, ready to go.
That's especially the no-till part is big right now.
Yeah.
The less tillage you can do, or the better you can handle the weeds, the better off. I actually saw, are those old silage tarps in between your tomato rows?
Yeah,
that's great.
These are tarps from 2005, so.
Oh wow, nice.
So yeah, they're quite old. Yeah, I think there's a big buzz around no-till, but for me, like, no-till in itself is not really the objective. I think living soils and learning how to work with soils that are really active and really alive, that for me is really, because you can have a no-till system and still have soil that's not healthy.
Yes.
It's really, if you have a good rotation program, if you have green manure program, how you still need to work the soil in somewhat of a depth. That's where the broad fork, the name of the farm, comes into play.
So what kind of rotation do you have through here, and do you have any kind of cover cropping or green manure strategies that you have that you use regularly?
Yeah, so the farm, because it's landlocked, that was the reason how we developed a lot of the strategies that we came up with, because we didn't have more land, but we wanted to optimize and get more yield. And so, because we're landlocked, it's really important to be tight with your rotation if you want to be farming for a long time, which has been the case for us here. So we have 10 field blocks that are kind of 10 different botanical families that are rotating every year.
Wow. And
certain crops will take 4 years before they come back to where they were. Others it's going to be 2, others it's going to be 5.
Wow. Okay.
So it's a pretty complicated crop rotation. You can read about it in the Market Gardener in my book. But in the end, it's really easy to operate, because what was here this year goes there next year, and so on and so forth.
Keep it simple out in the field.
Yeah, because the whole thing is to bring the complexity into the office in the winter, and then we have systems that are easy to operate in the summer.
That's great. So do you ever move your tunnels at all, or do they kind of stay?
Yeah, these are caterpillar tunnels. I just did a small video, people can check it out on the YouTube of the Institute, but just did a video about why caterpillar tunnels are important and different. And for us, they're really, really cheap structure, and they'll be moved around 3 times in the season.
Oh, in season they get.
Yeah,
That's
so
amazing.
in the spring, they're covering really early crops. In the summer, like let's say end of May, when we're planting tomatoes, eggplants, peppers, we'll put them over them for the summer, and then they'll really appreciate that. And then in the fall, the crops that we're planting, let's say late August, September, in mid-October, we'll move the caterpillar to those crops till Christmas.
Wow.
So we get a lot of usage from these, and that's why for me they're different than like those permanent structures. They're also really important, but these guys play a role of being able to move around with the tunnels.
And the way the weather's been lately, especially at least in our area, kind of growing under cover, it seems like most high quality vegetable production is moving to some kind of cover.
Yeah, there's the wind aspect, and then there's, in certain places controlling the amount of rainfall that, for certain crops it could be an issue, but the extra heat.
Especially those eggplants and the peppers.
Yeah, they
love
like it. And then when you open it, there's enough airflow, so you're not. Yeah, so caterpillar tunnel, again, these tarps, we talked about them. They've become, a staple of the farm. That's really part of our living soil strategy. And, some people, sometimes they see the black plastic and they're like, oh, black plastic. But, again, these plastics have been with us since 2015.
It's well worth it.
So, yeah, they've been reused many times, and they allow us to, well, you see when you remove it. So you see earthworms, So you see the moisture that's there, and that's really it's the absence of light that is allowing the bed to be really clean. And it's actually the earthworms and the spiders and everybody that's coming up chewing what was underneath. And then you see the bed is clean. What we do, since the bed is permanent, once the tarp is removed, we'll broad fork so that we have a good 12-inch of deep loose soil, without harming the biology in the soil. Mm-hmm. And then we'll put our compost, our amendments, and then we'll pass on 1 inch with a rotary plow on the BCS.
Okay.
And that will be a perfectly conditioned soil, a bed that has really deep loose soil, that has compost and fertility in the top inch, perfectly level, perfectly firmed, without any tillage, without any tractors.
That's awesome.
We have 150 of those 100-foot beds here on the farm.
And then compost, do you make all your own? Do you bring it in?
The compost here on the farm, we buy it from outside. We buy it because we don't have a tractor with a loader, so making compost doesn't make a lot of sense without one. We don't have any manure anyway. We make our own little compost, but it's never at the same level of quality of the compost that we buy. Mm-hmm. So we get our compost from compost geeks that are making truly amazing compost.
That's awesome.
And we also bring in a lot of Romeo wood chips.
Okay.
So the load of chip is coming this week. And the Romeo wood chip is what we put into our aisles. Romeo wood chip is not just wood chip, is the top branches of hardwood trees that we cut now in the spring, when all the energy of the tree is going into his branches to form the leaves. And there's a lot of energy there. There's a lot of enzymes. There's a lot of really good stuff. So we chip it and then we put it into the aisles, and that brings carbon, and it brings a lot of stuff that I don't really know. But that's where we have kind of the compost on top, the Romeo wood chip in the aisle, and a no-till system with the tarps, and that really keeps our soil alive.
How long will it take for those Romeo wood chips to break down?
4 years.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, and because the Romeo wood chip, if you put it directly into the bed, and if you plant into that, there's a lot of energy that needs to be taken to break down, like
you're locking up the carbon.
Yeah, you're locking up the carbon, so that's why we put it in the aisle. And then the aisles are lower because the beds are raised, so there's more water there. You can step on it, but you really see the mushrooms, and it's really beautiful.
Nice.
So when we re-raise our bed the next year, it's going back into the bed. Okay. But it's already kind of broken down.
Nice. So you do some perennial stuff too?
Yeah, we also have some perennials. We have some fruit trees, some Asian pears, really delicious pears. We have some raspberries. There's a lot of spot on the farm that is dedicated also to the biodiversity. If you walk around, you'll see there's a lot of bird houses. There's a lot of little ecological niches all around. So for us, and like many people, like the farm is a living space, and we want it to be hospitable to as many creatures as possible, except for gophers and
deer. Do you have a lot of deer up this way?
We have a lot of deers. Thankfully, the dogs keep them away, especially here at night. But like the 10-acre property, 7 of it is a wood lot. These are actually maple, so we do maple syrup here. It's not just maple syrup, but there's a lot of them. And the forest is where the interns stay. We have these little wooden huts. That's where they sleep, and then we have a common house where they come together for dinner. For many, many years, we've had a lot of people come to the farm, learn, start their own. See a farm that's functional, see a farm that's productive, profitable. And I always tell them, the farm needs to work for you, not the other way around.
I think a lot of people, especially in the beginning, just think if they can just strong arm it another year, it'll work itself out. But really, you need something that's actually gonna take care of you, not you constantly having to take care of it.
But that's where mentoring, training, that's really what's important, because it took us probably 5-6 years to figure the basics, and another 5-6 to master them. Do you really want to wait 10 years to really be good at it, or you'd rather kind of jumpstart your learning curve? And I think that's where training, that's where what Rodale is doing, what we're doing at the Market Gardener Institute plays a role. And from my experience, one of the key things for profitable market gardening, well, there's a lot, but farm design plays a really long role. You know, your setup really defines how you're going to be dealing with stuff on a daily basis. So having a good design here, you know, the fields are surrounding the washing pack station, so we're never far away. That I think is something that really helps.
Standardizing.
All the field blocks being the same size, so the material is versatile. You know, you have one length for row covers, one length for insect nets, drip tapes all the same length. That really changes the game. But also crop planning, learning how to crop plan really well, to have successions that are right on. That's another part. And just learning how to grow. Like,
Yes.
there's a lot of opportunities to make money with vegetables out there, but mastering how to grow each of them to the full potential, that takes...
That's 10 years. Takes a little time to get that.
But that's important, because in the end that helps.
Definitely.
You know, if you're not losing out on disease or pest, or if you're just kind of know how to do them optimally, that's a skill set that I think for growers is really important also.
Nice. And that's what they're learning when they come out here and spend the season.
Yeah, I think for one season or two, they won't be able to master how to grow, but they'll see an inspirational farm that they'll want to copycat. And I think that was my goal when I wrote my book.
Yeah, I know.
So
it
it's just
definitely-
like to give an example of one farm that runs well, and then, you know, it's up to people to figure out.
Yeah, and I think that's especially the successions seem to be the first roadblock of people. Like, you can get them set up, you can get it designed, you can get it ready to go, and they're like, wait, I have to do this every week or every 2 weeks. You're like, yeah, that's kind of how that works. I feel like that's one of to see something like that and to see kind of what the process is to do it and to do it regularly and to do it consistently is one of the first, especially with the beginning farmers, that seems to be a pretty big hurdle in the beginning.
Well, it's because it's part of a game plan. It's like learning what to grow, when, and where to put it when you're growing 40 different crops on a small acreage and you want to be profitable and productive. That's the art.
Yeah.
But you know, there's tricks out there. There's tools to help people do it.
And you said here there's about 40 different varieties of things?
Yeah, 40 different varieties.
Nice.
Now it's really early, so what we're seeing is not, you know, we're still early May, so we're still kind of planting the garden. Our last frost probably is going to be third.
Oh, really?
You know, the last full moon of May
Okay.
is usually our that's kind of our guideline.
Wow. Okay.
But even if there's a light frost, you know, with row covers, and we can deal. But usually the garden gets planted in May.
And then your full season kicks off.
And
in
then
June.
it kicks off, and then we have successions coming in all the way till November. Yeah, and you see there's a lot of emphasis on the farm on natural habitats, and there's one habitat there. We're a big believer in that. You know, the reason why we got into farming was to be part of nature and just work with nature, and that was really our motivation. And it's funny, you see like there's the neighbor on his tractor. He's putting the manure on the cornfields, and you know, when we got here, people thought we were crazy. 1.5 acres, you know, for when you're growing corn, that's nothing.
Yes.
But we definitely proved them wrong, and then the farm became more popular, and then it became a bit famous, and then everybody's kind of proud of the farm now in the neighborhood. But
They all thought you were crazy a
Yeah,
couple years ago.
and-
That's funny.
yeah, and I think we were always big on not blaming conventional farmers for like, okay, we're doing something really different than you guys, but we're not enemies.
Yeah.
We're just here to prove that we could do this differently. And you see, if you look at the fields here, we use a lot of row covers, a lot of insect nets. That's how we protect most of our crops against insect pressure. And you know, you really see when you standardize, that's where there's a lot of gain. And again, when I started in farming, these things weren't talked about. It wasn't very common. Now, you know, it's really rare that you'll see a picture of a farm from above that's not really well squared off. So I'm really happy with that.
Yeah, when you're doing that winter work, that really standardization really helps you to kind of dial it in too.
Yeah, and I think that's part of our success has been having winters off and being able to recharge the battery, do something else, but also focus on how we can improve what we're doing. You know, buying all the material in the winter. We do one big seed order in December. We try to do as much as we can during those winter months so that when it's ready to roll, we're fully organized, everything is set up. It's kind of a press play.
Nice.
So the workload is always big, still in the summer, but at least we're not thinking about...
You're not thinking you're just doing that?
No, we're doing stuff, we're following the plan.
Nice.
And that's important.
How long do you think it took you to get to the point where you could just kind of press play and go right into the plan, where you weren't maybe ad-libbing on the fly?
Yeah, I think we're always changing. Maude-Helene changes the plan, even now, after 15 plus years. But I think setting the rotations that we did, that kind of set the tone. So if there's 10 field blocks, there are 15 beds per field block, and they're a botanical family. If you decide that you have one bed for crucifers, or one block for crucifers, well, that's 15 beds.
Yep.
That kind of limits what you can do and not do. But I think that's a great way to control. Because if you can do whatever all the time, then it's not a rotation.
Where do you start? Yeah. No, that's great.
And I really like the fact that we do most things by hand. And not to say that when it's mechanized, it's not good. Not that. But I think it's really kind of magical that you can do it by hand and still be profitable and still be very productive. And so for me, that's really where market gardening is different than market farming. Like the market garden is with hand tools, and the goal is to just like to be optimal as much as possible without having too much investment in equipment, in the layout. Irrigating an acre and a half and 5 acres.
It's a lot.
It's a different project.
Oh yes, very much so.
So if you can be intense and really densify your cropping patterns and really have as many successions as possible, let's say you're able to grow, here $300,000 on an acre and a half. There's an advantage with terms of the layout being not so spread out. You save a lot on certain costs and time.
Certainly on materials, absolutely.
Yeah, material.
Just limiting it, I think, is helpful too.
Yeah.
We can't do 1,000 varieties of
I
100
agree.
different things.
Yeah, that's what permaculture teaches us. Like constraints are
Helpful.
very helpful.
Yes.
And I think our success here at the farm is definitely the land constraint. That's for sure. That's the reason why our farm really took off and started to function.
And that you've been pretty steady with what you've been being able to pull off this every year for 20 years.
It's been pretty much the same thing. The quantities have risen. Obviously, the price. Also, we've risen the price over the years. But the margins have always been pretty good, around 50%. So
Wow.
that for us is really the key here. And Maude-Helene has kept it simple enough that it always works well.
Nice.
Sometimes you want to try out new stuff, you invest, and sometimes it doesn't plan out. I was big at that.
Fair enough.
That's why the research farm at the other place was a good playground for me.
Fair enough. It's funny that the market gardeners that I work with are very specific about they're not farmers. It's not a market farm. It's a market garden for gardeners, and I think that's an important marketing distinction, but also kind of to have that conversation with other people about why it's different and how it can be helpful, especially if you're a new farmer and are landlocked or you can't afford 30 acres to do your whole setup to kind of know how to do it on a smaller scale. And
one doesn't impede the others. Like you can start on an acre, half an acre, and move to 1 or 3 and eventually to 10. We were talking about this. You could have the market garden in the middle and then bigger field blocks for more mechanized farming. You could have that, but it's always a matter of the return on the investment and the profit that you make on the farm. So volumes, for me, if you're selling discount to wholesales, they're not that interesting in this kind of model. So here we're direct selling everything. We get the full price for everything that we grow. We're really, really, really good here at being planting as pretty much exactly what we need or exactly what we're going to sell. So we're not working for nothing. We pretty much, not always, but we pretty much have everything we need for each of our markets. And so we're capturing all the sales. A lot of it is cash money. That's also something to think about. So there's a lot of advantage in farming small. We meet the customers, the clients, they say thank you.
That's the other part, to be able to have the conversation
Yeah.
with the end user.
Yeah.
Is you're educating while you're feeding and taking care of all those people too. So
It's good.
just having the conversation is helpful. In the US, about 70% of farmland is going to change hands in the next 15 years. So part of the RIFT program is to have farmers who are willing and able to kind of take that farmland and keep it as farmland without it going to a developer or a warehouse or something like that. So I think training farmers or educating people about the different farming styles that there is super important, especially right now.
Yeah, there's going to be a shift in, a lot of farmers that are retiring need to be replaced. So there's definitely an opportunity there for young farmers to take a role in these communities, and that's what, we've created here. It's like I was telling you about that restaurant that we went together.
Yes.
We have Wednesday night farmers night, and it's all young farmers that have taken the place of older farmers that are not there anymore. So like I've seen it operate in certain places, and for me, my whole thing is that we need to multiply these farms and replace mass production by the masses. So that's that whole mentality of smaller farms, more diversified, direct to consumers, food hubs, farm hubs, whatever. It's like it's going to take all sorts of forms, but that's definitely what's at play here.